Kawasaki have brought the class back with the ZX4RR. With a claimed 75 horsepower on tap, the Kawasaki's output demolishes all those 1990s forebears, but with modern fuel injection remains flexible enough to let you wring its neck on the back roads and potter through the villages at 30 mph without any mechanical grumbles. The Mini Ninja 8,699 pounds is almost 2,000 pounds more than Kawasaki's twin-cylinder Ninja 400, and 1,200 pounds more than the also twin-cylinder Ninja 650. It makes almost twice the power of the Ninja 400 and 10 brake horsepower more than the Ninja 650, but it's also 2,200 pounds less than the 120 brake horsepower ZX6R, and so probably just about perfect for where it sits. The ZX4RR 4-cylinder engine is derived like the rest of the bike from the 250cc ZX25R that's been around since 2020. The extra capacity comes from increasing the bore from 50mm to 57mm, and the stroke from 31.8mm to 39.1mm. Compression ratio is 12:3:1, which gives a claimed power figure of 76.4 horsepower, rising to 79.1 horsepower when ram air effect is added at speed. There are different specs and power outputs in different markets. Europe gets the full power versions, but the USA, for instance, has a restricted 56.3 horsepower ZX4RR, and in Australia the power is pegged at 73.8 horsepower. There are 4 riding modes: Sport, Road, Rain and Rider adjustable, each altering the bike's power map and traction control settings. The ZX4RR also gets an up and down quick shifter as standard, and given how much you use the gears to keep that engine on the boil, it's a very worthwhile addition. Peak power arrives at 14,500 revolution per minute, while peak torque, 39 Nm, is only just behind it at 13,000 revolution per minute. The power figure is impressive for a small capacity Euro 5 bike, and almost 30% up on the old ZXR 400, which had no emissions equipment, and even when tuned for racing would only make 75 to 80 horsepower. Kawasaki's engineers have juggled the torque and revs calculation smartly. The engine makes very little torque but has enough revolution per minute to make the extra power. The gear change is slick, but finding neutral at a standstill takes more finesse than most bikes. You soon get the hang of it. But setting off from rest is a noisy affair at first, as you misjudge how quickly it revs and open the throttle too far while releasing the clutch, setting curtains twitching and muttered grumbles about teenage hooligans on the road. The secret is to almost release the clutch fully before applying any throttle to get the bike rolling, and then add the power smoothly. This is not a slow bike by any standards, but it very rarely feels like a fast one either, until you look down at the speedo and realize just how rapidly you are moving. It's all relative, of course. If you've just traded up from a 125, the ZX4RR will feel like the fastest thing on earth. If you traded down from a bigger bike, it'll take a few hundred miles to get used to the Kawasaki's power delivery. It reminds me of a 1990s two-stroke 250, in that the power builds gently, but relentlessly, without ever feeling powerful. Ride it without looking at the tacho and the engine gravitates towards 8,000 revolutions per minute. This is where you'll find a slight step in power, the place you need to be for overtaking dawdling cars on B roads, from where it flies through to 14,000 revolutions per minute, and the dash lights up orange before you hit the red line at 16,000 revolutions per minute. At that point you are going way faster than you imagined, getting on for twice the top speed of that 125 you part-exchanged, or barely any slower than the 10-year-old superbike you traded down from because it was too fast and scary. The Kawasaki is more comfortable to ride than a Fireblade or an R7. The riding position is sporty but roomy too. The steel trellis frame is based on the chassis of the ZX25R, but with a steeper head angle and reduced trail. The wheelbase is a compact 1380mm, and curb weight with a full tank of fuel is 188 kilograms. At the track test, Kawasaki had swapped the road bias Dunlop GPR 300 tires for Pirelli Diablo Rosso IIIs. The ZX4RR has Showa SFF BP forks plus a Showa BFRC light rear shock. The forks are adjustable for preload, while the rear shock adds compression and rebound damping. Manufacturers often scrimp on suspension spec to reduce costs on lower capacity bikes, but this doesn't appear so with Kawasaki. On the road, this translates to a ride quality often missing on sub 10,000 pounds bikes. There's a series of 3 bumps on one of my regular road test routes that start with a whopper and follow with 2 slightly lesser ones. The first bump compresses rear suspension hard, and while a quality shock regains composure in time for the other bumps, a budget unit is generally still working out what just happened when it hits the rest. The ZX4RR handled this section with ease and control much better than any of its rivals listed above. Braking hard with a 13-stone middle-aged bag of ambitious old bones tests the damping settings of unadjustable forks designed for a skinny 25-year-old, but without too much drama. On the track, Chad reported feeling instantly at home and found a decent pace straight from the off. The compact dimensions of the ZX4RR should make it a tight fit for larger riders, but as mentioned above, the ZX4RR is surprisingly roomy and comfy for at least a couple of hours at a time. The mirrors work well, and little things like getting to the side stand are straightforward. The 800mm seat height is reasonably low for a sports bike too. The view from the seat is neat switchgear that, like most Kawasaki's, is relatively simple, and a clear 4.3 TFT dash which has connectivity. There are 4 riding modes: Sport, Road, Rain, and Rider mode, which changes the power and KTRC traction control. In reality, though, with such little torque and the broad rev range, you can leave it in Sport mode all the time and never worry about what the weather is doing. There's an additional circuit mode that changes the screen to give a large lap timer and rev counter, which is ideal for track day fun and somewhat addictive. As mentioned above, fuel economy isn't the Baby Ninja's biggest selling point. In theory, this could be an efficient engine, and it ought to be possible to see consumption in the mid-50s mpg if you need to. But you won't, because the little green devil on your shoulder will always win. Twin 290mm front discs, each with radial 4-pot calipers, and a 220mm disc with a single pot caliper at the back, with ABS at both ends. The brakes are forgiving and strong enough for some track fun, but not too sharp on the road for inexperienced riders. The brake and clutch lever is span adjustable, and even at a decent track pace they showed no indication of fade. The ABS is conventional and not lean sensitive. Our track test found it a little intrusive when pushing for a fast lap, but this is to be expected on an entry-level sports bike. The ZX4RR has some mighty big shoes to fill. Nevertheless, the new ZX4RR picks up seamlessly from where the original let go and is also neater, faster, safer, roomier, and far easier to ride. Kawasaki have been brave to produce such an unusual bike for the times. It's the only sports 400 on the market, but Bike Social is pleased they have.